My friends at Easy Cater are workplace catering pros, helping you find food for everything from daily employee meals to staff meetings and special events. Visit easycater.com/leaderassistant to find out more.
I'm Angelic Veasman. Today's leadership quote comes from German philosopher Oswald Spengler. This is our purpose, to make as meaningful as possible this life that has been bestowed upon us, to live in such a way that we may be proud of ourselves, and to act in such a way that some part of us lives on.
The Leader Assistant podcast exists to encourage and challenge assistants to become confident, game-changing leader assistants.
Thank you for listening to the Leader Assistant podcast.
Here's your host, my dad.
Hey friends, thanks for tuning in. Just wanted to give you a quick note to find the show notes for today's episode at leaderassistant.com/102. leaderassistant.com/102 to find the show notes and links to connect with today's guest. I also wanted to invite you to check out my book if you haven't already. It's on Amazon Kindle ebook. You can get it on Barnes & Noble. You can get the audiobook on Audible or on Apple Books. And of course, you can get the paperback on Amazon or Walmart or Barnes & Noble or your local bookstore. Should be able to order it as well. Amazon.leaderassistant.com, or if you're looking for the Audible version, you can go to audio.leaderassistant.com. Hope you can check it out. Let me know what you think. I hope you enjoyed today's interview. Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to the Leader Assistant Podcast. It's your host, Jeremy Burrows, and today I'm speaking with Angelic Veasman. Angelic is CEO of Lady Powerhouse. Angelic, how's it going?
Going pretty good. How are you?
I'm doing all right. And where are you in the world?
I am, about an hour and a half south of St. Louis, Missouri. Not quite in the Boot Hill, but close to it.
Awesome. I'm very excited I'm 99% sure that this is my first interview with someone in the St. Louis area, so I'm very excited.
Cool. Me too. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure. It's an honor to be here. I've learned so much from your podcast over the past year, and I'm really happy to be your guest today, so thank you.
Great. Well, let's jump in and let's talk about your very first job. What was your very first job, and what did you learn in that role that you use today?
Sure. So my very first job was doing singing telegrams in high school.
Wow.
And it was fun. But I think what I learned from that was to be flexible and the ability to improvise, right? So, and I think one of the other things too was learning to keep your composure when maybe things don't go as planned. Because, if you don't look like you made a mistake, they probably won't know that you made a mistake or what have you. So it's really taught me to think on my feet and to keep my composure or stress.
Awesome. So when did you become an assistant and why?
So I became an assistant pretty much straight out of high school, and it more out of necessity. About the middle of my high school, years, my life kind of turned upside down. My mom got cancer, and so things didn't go quite as planned. I had plans to go to college. I had plans to get married out of high school, but then my mom got cancer, and I had to drop out and take care of her. And then afterwards, I just picked right back up and went back to high school and married at this point. So I was seen as an emancipated minor, and I ended up graduating about 7 months pregnant. So, I started having children and having to provide for them. So I just started working. And I had taken typing in high school, like so many women and girls. And it just was one of those skills that I had. So that's what I did.
Awesome. So how many kids do you have?
I have 2 grown daughters, and we have 6 grandchildren between the 2 of them.
Wow. So are any of them in the administrative profession?
No, they're not. Neither one of them really are, but but they still have that they're very organized and a little analytical and overthinkers, kind of like I tend to be.
Nice.
Which serves me pretty darn well in my job.
Yeah, definitely. I got my detail, organization, OCD-ness from my mom, so I have her to thank for my awesome EA skills. So what's the funniest or most interesting thing to ever happen to you as an assistant?
So I have to go with the most interesting, because funny things happen to me all the time, and it's usually something goofy that I'm doing. But the most interesting thing that ever happened to me was I was a secretary in a large healthcare system in St. Louis, and every year they do a conference for the employees, kind of a part getaway, part State of the Union kind of thing. And shortly after the American Idol thing came out, they decided to kind of get some talent from within the company. And so the way they did that was they had internal, like American Idol competitions. And my boss at the time knew that I sang, and he says, "Hey, I want you to just sing a song for me," because I did it like a karaoke kind of setup. And I said, "Sure, I'd love to sing a song for you. No problem." But in order to do that, I had to register for the contest. I had to get a number and everything. I was like, "Sure, fine, whatever, but I'm not interested." Because I was just at a place in my life where I was like, I don't need to be on the stage again. I don't need to perform again. That's my past life, right? And so then a couple of weeks later, HR shows up with my golden ticket, and I've won. And now I'm part of this quote unquote official, choir. And I tell you what, I absolutely loved it, and ended up performing on, the largest stage I'd ever performed on, and had the most fun I've ever had in my performing life. And ended up singing in front of thousands of people. We were at the Two Hill, which holds like 1,500 people or something, and we would almost pack it out several days in a row. Wow. And we would do 2-3 performances a day. And we did that for several years. And it was a complete blast, and I was paid for it, which was just icing on the cake. Wow.
That is definitely interesting. I don't know that I've heard of a internal company-wide American Idol competition.
Yeah. We had some really, really talented people in the organization, and it was nice for them to be able to show that, you can be a nurse and you can be a flutist or violinist, that kind of thing.
Cool. So let's talk a little bit about a couple of practical tips for EAs. Let's start with managing an executive's email inbox. Do you have any tips?
So, I think that it has to start with, the parameters that you and your executive set, right? And how long you've been supporting that person. If you're new, if this is a new thing, hey, I can't do this anymore, and they just kind of hand it over to you, and you already have a feel for that executive. But either way, you've got to have a system. And so if you have a system for your own email and how you manage it, that should translate, right? I always try to do the inbox zero method, where, really you only look at an email one time, maximum 2. If you can take care of it within a minute or 2, then do it, knock it out. If you can't, my trick was to set it, and, back when I was in corporate, I used Outlook. So I would set a deadline, and then an alarm would go off to remind me. and that deadline could be during my block in the day, near the end of the day at 3 or 4 o'clock when I allotted an hour to do email. Or it could be the next day when I know I've already met with my, exec for our weekly one-on-one, and I can get those questions answered and then respond to the email. So it's just, whatever system you have in place, do that way. And then some of the other things is, don't keep typing the same thing over and over again. So I used to do medical transcription. So, if I was always typing that same phrase over again, create a template, create a quick part, or whatever it is, whatever you're using, G Suite, Outlook, whatever, create those, shortcuts for yourself and create those rules or filters or whatever, again, depending on, the application that you're using, to help you filter or file away those emails. If an email's going to come in and it's not urgent, and it's it's a weekly newsletter that he wants to read and he always wants you to print it off, you can have those filter into a folder, and then once a week print them off for him or her, that kind of thing. I think that's probably about it.
Yeah, that's great. Love it. What about just general productivity hacks? Do you have anything you like to do to get stuff done?
So for me, it's a really, everything goes on my calendar as a reminder or as a block of time. I really block things out. Like 9 and 9:30, I'm going to check email. And then when 9:30 hits, I stop no matter where I'm at. And I move on to the next thing. And kind of like, what is it called? Pomodoro method, where you set that timer for 25 minutes or 55 minutes, whatever it is, depending on the project. And because I work really well with deadlines. In fact, I kind of need them to be most productive. So that's what I do. Is I just use that calendar to my advantage. I do color code, but I don't go crazy with it. I might maybe have 3 or 4 different colors on the calendar to help me just, quickly recognize what something is and when to do it. And to have your own, because I am self-employed and I work from home, I really have to have a schedule for myself. And that's what really keeps me most productive. And I notice if I fall off the train, my whole day tends to get derailed if I don't try and really stick to that habit, that ritual.
Yeah. So what would you tell someone who's considering becoming an assistant?
Please love doing that. I've worked with people and I have met people who absolutely hate what they do. And they're miserable. Why would you do something that you don't enjoy? And plus, you're probably going to make your coworkers miserable too. So please, if you're going to be an assistant, try to make sure that you really enjoy it the most part. I mean, you're not going to love everything 100% of the time, right? But for the most part, overall, please like what you do. You'll be happy. Your coworkers will be happy. And I think that's my biggest advice.
So how about people that are assistants now? What should they stop doing and what should they start doing?
Well, it's kind of a two-edged sword. So stop devaluing your worth. Stop saying yes when you're already topped out without conditions, without saying, I would be happy to do that. What am I taking off my plate to allow me bandwidth to do that to the best of my ability? Just learning, just self-respect. So that's the stop. That's the stop, is stop devaluing, stop saying yes when you really need to say no or want to. You just want to say no. You don't want that job. People so often I hear, oh, you're so good at this. You would knock this out in no time. And the reason they knock it out in no time is because they don't like doing it. They just want to get it over with. And then the things I would say, let me think about that, to start doing, valuing yourself, respecting yourself, positioning yourself in such a way that, when people approach you, you can kind of tell when you approach people, that first impression, their body language, those nonverbal cues. If you don't already know what those are about yourself, learn, figure that out, and just be self-aware. And, start speaking up. That's a big one. Yeah. Because, I don't know why it's so hard for us to say, oh, I did a really good job on that. And start owning the things that you do right and owning the things that maybe you didn't. And grow from those things. And don't be afraid to be uncomfortable. Growth doesn't come when we're comfortable. And if we want to grow and learn and evolve, we need to be a little uncomfortable, maybe a lot uncomfortable more of the time. Mm-hmm. I would say that start getting comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Perfect. So what would you tell an executive assistant who wants to become a virtual or remote assistant?
So I listened to your podcast, Jeremy, and I know that you ask this question quite a bit. At least you have recently, it seems like. And so much of the time people say, just do it. And I have to agree with that. I mean, that sounds so simple. And I'm not trying to be cliche, but just do it. I'm trying to think of the reasons you wouldn't want to do it. If you're the type of person that isn't very self-motivated or self-directed or self-starter, being a virtual assistant or a remote assistant can be challenging if you are one of those people that needs to have a lot of outward guidance. Like if you aren't able to keep yourself on a schedule, like I mentioned before, you kind of really have to have that. I was on quite a learning curve when I started doing this, and I learned very quickly what days I got derailed, and I practiced something. And I think you mentioned this on one of the podcasts or something, but I've heard it from other sources as well. But you've reinforced it in your podcasts and your blogs and things, is that do a weekly review or a monthly review. So look back at your week and look at what went well, what didn't, and how to make positive changes. What can I do better next week? What can I stop doing? What can I start doing? And I think that is another thing that's just, kind of, I don't want to say mandatory, but really important. A characteristic that would be really important for somebody who wanted to be a VA. But overall, go for it. Absolutely go for it.
Nice.
Who doesn't want that autonomy, right?
Right. So what about, should virtual remote assistants, should they specialize? Say, for example, I'm a travel virtual assistant, or I'm a graphic designer virtual assistant, or should they be more of a Jack or Jane of all trades?
Absolutely specialized. Absolutely. Now, it's difficult in the beginning to know what to specialize in, and I recognize that. And a lot of times it's trial and error. Don't be afraid to change your niche or to specialize in something different. You might start out saying, "Oh yeah, I love travel," and then that's all you do, and you're like, "I am so sick of travel." So don't be afraid to change your specialization, or as the hot word is now, to pivot, But being a jack of all trades is really difficult because, what first comes to mind is the jack of all trades, master of none. So what are you really an expert in? So specializing in something allows you to charge a higher rate of pay because you are specialized. There, for instance, one example is there aren't a lot of people out there who know Kajabi. There are more now than there used to be. But Kajabi is in high demand. Check it out. See if you like it. It may be something that you would really be great at. And you can specialize in that niche. Or maybe it's Trello. Or maybe it's, Asana or whatever it is. But definitely specializing is the way to go. And I think the other side of that is that it's something that you enjoy. Again, back to like what you do. Don't make yourself and other people miserable. Like what you do. And if you find that after a while you don't love it as much as you used to, that's okay. You can change. We can evolve. We can. It's okay.
So tell us a little bit about your switch and your transition. I'm assuming you weren't always a remote assistant, correct? You're in office and then transitioned at some point?
Correct. I have spent the majority of my career in a corporation or organization of some kind. I did start out in a doctor's office, just a specialist's office. But the majority of my career was spent in a large organization or a large corporation of some kind. And that transition, as I mentioned earlier, it was a steep learning curve because where you think you'll love all this freedom and lack of structure and the ability to, go to work when you want and work when when you're at your energy is at its highest and not when it's at its lowest, or to be able to choose which tasks you're doing during those times. That's all great. It really is. It really is great. But again, you have to be a self-starter and recognize your patterns and be able to adjust to be most successful at doing that. And so my transition, like I said, I made so many mistakes in the beginning, but I'm a quick learner. I will give myself that. And I always have been. I've always been a very fast learner, especially when it came to tech. So I just, it's okay. I'm okay with making mistakes and just evolve and change.
Nice. So you specialize currently in events, like event planning and project management primarily, right?
Yes.
So
project management is a big umbrella, though. So
right, true. A lot of different things can be managed. A lot of different projects. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about events real quick first. What are your top tips for planning and running events?
Whether it's a live event or a virtual event, and we know virtual events are really ramping up as of late. But so the first thing you have to know, my top tip is, number one, you got to know why you're doing the event. So what's your goal, right? What's your end game? Are you wanting to just, and again, events don't have to be huge either. They can just be like a local business doing an open house. So it doesn't need to be huge, but what's the reason you're doing it? Are you just wanting to get a community together so they can feel good about your brand? Or are you just trying to create revenue? Or are you wanting to offer training or to be able to sell your products or service to a larger audience? Whatever your why is, know what that is. And two, start planning early. And if you think you're planning early enough, you're not. So plan on planning earlier than that, because you can't start planning too soon. I mean, you're more likely to not plan soon enough than you are to plan too far ahead in advance, especially live events. Virtual events, not so much, but live events especially, because there's just a lot more physical logistics going on there. And then always have a plan B, always have a backup plan, man, because all kinds of stuff's going to happen and go wrong. It's, just the nature of the beast, whether it's a live event, but again, especially live events. I think, though, even with virtual events, you've got a lot of technology stuff, right? How many of us have attended or, been to a meeting where there's somebody calling in or, conferencing in and they can't get in, or the connection won't work, or the connection is bad, whatever. So always have a plan B, maybe just, maybe even a plan C, like a plan B for your plan B. Never a bad idea to have a backup plan. And then you got to have a budget and you got to stick to it. Especially if you're doing this for hire. You're not just doing it for yourself. If you're given a budget, or they, for if it's a first time kind of thing, really do your research and know what your budget for that size or scope or whatever type of event, what it is. And, if you're selling tickets, always go like plan pessimistically versus, optimistically. It's great to oversell and sell more tickets than you think and have more money at the end of the budget than it is to way undersell the number of tickets you have and not have enough money to pay your vendors or your speakers or what have you. So I think that's the last thing is just to have a good budget, do your research, and stick as closely to that as you possibly can.
Nice. So what about just general project management best practices? A couple things you want to share?
Sure. Yeah. You've got to have a system for any kind of project, whether it's and my projects, I'll tell you, my projects tend to fall into, I work with a lot of people who are solopreneurs too. And they want to revise their website, or they want to launch an online course, or they need help with their marketing, their social media management. That's the kind of projects that I tend to fall into, not fall, but choose, because another great thing, shameless plug, about being a VA and being a remote worker is you do get to pick what your clients, if you have a chemistry call with someone and you decide, he sounded, he kind of sounded kind of squirrely, I'm not really sure about that guy, you can tell them no. But for project management, you have to have a system, whether it's a spreadsheet, just an Excel spreadsheet, or if you're using a CRM, or if you're using a formal project management app or software or program or whatever it is, or hybrid of more than one or two systems. And so you have to have a system, whatever works for you. And then you have to remember that, and the reason I say this is because I have fallen into this so many times where you're supposed to be managing the project, delegating to team members. And that doesn't mean that you're not necessarily a team member yourself, but don't get stuck trying to do the majority of the tasks yourself. That's not management, that's micromanagement. So that would be a second tip. And then, having some kind of measurements in mind, whether you're using KPIs or SMART goals or, something like that. And, recently you had somebody on that talked about OKRs and MBOs and things like that. So just having something that is measurable and knowing, for instance, if, you do have, an objective and key result, and it's a 3-month project, you're not going to visit that OKR quarterly. You're going to visit it monthly. I think about it kind of like a pregnancy, which is like this 9-month-long project, right? And so at the beginning of the pregnancy, you are seeing that OBGYN once a month until you get closer to that last trimester, and then you start going in every 2 weeks, and then you start going in every week. So it's a project is kind of like you're delivering a baby. You're delivering a product or a service typically. And so just to keep those kinds of measurements in mind.
That's an interesting analogy. I've never heard it described that way, but it's very clear.
It's from working with in healthcare and working with the maternity service line for many years.
Yes. Awesome. So if you could snap your fingers and instantly give all assistants more of something, what would it be?
Respect from others and respect for themselves. I think that's one of the things that we struggle with and that I hear and that I see and that I experienced myself was feeling like we just weren't respected or that we weren't valued. If I could snap my fingers and give every single assistant out there the level of respect and value that they actually deserve, and some of them, it may not be very much, I'll be honest. But the majority, I have to say, are just so undervalued. And there's just a lack of just really value there. If I could snap my fingers and take anything away or give anything, that would be it.
What makes an assistant a leader?
So, again, I think it comes back to attitude and mindset. You can teach anyone a skill. There's so many resources out there now on the interwebs. There's Udemy, there's Coursera. You can go online and learn anything, but you can't teach attitude very much. Most people come into a position with an attitude or mindset. And I think that's what makes the difference. Someone who has a can-do attitude, a problem-solver attitude, and they work beside attitude and mindset, I think that's what makes them a leader.
I agree. Love it. So, Angelique, where can we find you online? And tell us a little bit about your company and what you're doing and how we can support you.
Awesome. So I'm at ladypowerhouse.com. You can find me on social media on LinkedIn, Facebook, Pinterest, and this new thing going around called Alignable. And, you can support me by reaching out. I'd love to connect with people. I do virtual coffees all the time. I do in real life coffees too, but it's just so much easier when you're on LinkedIn or whatever, and you see someone and you see something that piques your interest. And I don't know about you, but I get these a lot. Oh, tell me more about your blah, 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 or whatever. I really like to flip those around and say, hey, can we set up a virtual coffee? Don't sell anything. Don't, position yourself. Don't, just get to know them. Just really get to know them and build relationships. So that's what I'm in the business of doing. And I think a lot of assistants, that is our secret weapon, right? The relationships that we have with people, good or bad. Hit me up on LinkedIn or Facebook, and let's have coffee.
Awesome. Yeah, I think I included a quote from you about relationships in my new book, so be excited to share that. We'll put all those links in the show notes so people can find you easily. Angelique, thanks so much for taking time out of your evening to chat with us and share your tips and a little bit of your story. And we'll look forward to seeing you soon and staying in touch.
Absolutely. Thanks again, Jeremy. You have a great night.
Please review on Apple Podcasts. GoBulls.com